So morning to all seniors. I'll start my topic. Sir, I think everything is clear. It's audible and my screen is visible.
Yes, yes, we got your screen and we can hear you. Yeah.
Yes, sir. So peripancreatic fluid collection, as sir has already said, pancreatitis is not something which we can discuss in 30 minutes or a 2 hours session, but I'll try to cover most of the topic related to peripancreatic fluid collection and try to do some justice with it. So peripancreatic fluid collections are the frequent complication of pancreatitis, and means almost, as sir said, Birappa sir said 80% of them recover with the mild disease, but remaining 15 to 30% they may develop complications, and they may develop peripancreatic fluid collection, which will range from either just peripancreatic free fluid, or it can be a localized collection cyst, or it can be a necrosis, or it can be extensive necrosis, which is foregoing to the adjacent structure. As we have heard to Dr. Patra regarding anatomy of the pancreas, we can make out that the organ is so posterior, so that any inflammation occurring in that area will usually track to the adjacent area and can lead to the complication in the adjacent area. In addition to pancreatitis, any other causes of pancreatitis like trauma, surgery, or post-transplant, or a pancreatic ductal obstruction can also lead to a peripancreatic fluid collection. Pancreatic fluid collections are usually the major cause of morbidity during the attack of pancreatitis, and if they progresses, or if it is associated with necrosis or septic complication, then they may further lead to increase in the probability of prolonged patient having morbidity and stay in the hospital. And they're with pancreatic fluid collections, they can be classified.
Sachin, I think we are stuck on your first slide itself. Your slides are not moving. It's just showing the first slide, peripancreatic fluid collection. It's not moving.
Just a second. Just a second, sir.
Sure.
Sir, is it the second slide is visible, sir?
No, still the first one.
Is it changed now, sir?
No, it hasn't still gone to the presentation mode. Just see the whole thing. I think it's the Apple has some problem with it. Just go to the slideshow. We can see your screen.
I can see my screen. I'm trying to share it also. I'll just pause everything. My sharing has gone, sir?
Yeah, it's not there now.
Now it is there?
Yeah.
So I'll just come to the definitions of peripancreatic fluid collections. As sir has already talked about revised Atlanta classification of 2013. I'll come to I'll be talking pertaining to the peripancreatic fluid collections.
Sachin, can you go to the second or third slide? It is still stuck on the first slide only. Or do it manually rather than the play. I don't know how it works in Apple.
Now it is something is seen, sir, now?
You are pressing the play button. It is not automatically playing over. So
okay, I'll just use cursor and then do it.
Yeah.
Now it is moving, sir.
No, it's not. Still on only first slide. It's not going further. Instead of the play.
Okay, sir. I'll just.
Now it has gone to the second slide, although it's not in the show mode.
Yeah. I'll do one thing, sir. Is this okay, sir?
Yeah.
That's better. That's better. Yeah.
But then it will not take. It's okay, sir. It will not take most of the bullets and which I have arranged.
Okay. More.
Okay. Anyway, try now. We'll see.
Now it is seen, sir. Any change of slide?
No, slide is, we are on the third slide, peripancreatic fluid collections.
Okay.
Yeah, now it's gone. Yeah, now it is working.
So revised Atlanta classification divides fluid collection into acute and chronic pancreatitis, acute and chronic, and acute is further divided into acute peripancreatic fluid collection and acute necrotic collection.
Not able to see the slides, Sachin. Slide is gone.
Yeah.
Yeah, now we can see.
Yeah, so revised Atlanta criteria where acute is divided into acute peripancreatic fluid collection and acute necrotic collection, and chronic is divided into pseudocyst and walled off pancreatic necrosis. So how does the peripancreatic fluid collection occur? Actually, nowadays it is considered that the whole basis of pancreatitis is a ischemic insult. Either let it be any reason. Whenever there is ischemia to the pancreas, a cascade of reaction occurs, and that leads into the inflammation and inflammatory exudate, which leads to possibly leak of pancreatic secretion. And pancreatic secretion, depending on the extent of injury, it can lead to either peripancreatic edema, peripancreatic fluid collection, peripancreatic necrosis. And depending on during this injury, how patient is managed, that decides the outcome of first 2 weeks, like whether patient will have multi-organ failure, whether patient will have a SIRS response. So overall, to prevent any complication of pancreatitis, it is very important that the treatment, it should start then and there itself when the patient is identified with acute abdomen, so that most of the complications can be avoided. Now the four type of peripancreatic fluid collections which we talked about, like acute peripancreatic fluid collections, these are usually seen within first 4 weeks of an attack. They are multiple and ill-defined. They will not have a defined wall. The usually contents are homogeneous because there is no differentiation between the liquefied, solid, or necrotic or a fluid. So they are usually confined to the facial plane, and most of them are sterile, and very fair chances that they may resolve spontaneously. You can see here this peripancreatic fluid. Then pancreatic pseudocysts. So when these fluid collections persist for a long time, and then they are protected by body protective mechanism where they get walled off and the wall becomes thick, and these fluid collections which have a thick wall, which are for more than 4 weeks of period, and they have usually a liquid content or minimal of a solid content, these are called pancreatic pseudocyst, and most of them may have sometimes a disconnected pancreatic duct either from the main or from the side branch. Acute necrotic collection. This is also seen in less than 4 weeks of pancreatitis, where we can see that there is evidence of necrosis in and around the pancreas, and this is the pancreas. Sometimes it can be associated with the fluid collections along with the necrosis, but this is the acute phase. And after this phase, when it gets organized, either it will get resolved or it will get organized, and then this may become a future wall of necrosis or a pseudocyst, depending on how much amount of necrosis there will be and how much will be the liquefied content. So here we can see a wall of necrosis, where it is walled off, duration is more than 4 weeks, and they will have a inflammatory wall around it by the surrounding structure. and they can be in the pancreas or they may be in the peripancreatic tissue. Now coming to the imaging of peripancreatic fluid collections, usually ultrasound is the first imaging which is done, which defines whether there is a, how is the status of pancreas, how are the adjacent organs to see for any gallbladder. And once we identify that there is a significant further complication, then a CECT abdomen is done. Definitely CECT abdomen can be done in acute settings where there is a diagnostic dilemma also. And this is a CT scan of a patient where we can see a well-confined pseudocyst. This is acute inflammatory response where we can see the free fluid, and also there is we can see the necrosis in the head region extending into the inframesenteric region also. Here we can see how along the planes in the retroperitoneum, the necrosis or the injury because of pancreatitis occurs. This is the MRI, and the advantage of MRI is it can help in differentiating between the liquid as well as the solid content. So MRI, it has an advantage in acute pancreatitis, particularly where we are seeing peripancreatic fluid collection. It will help us in better defining. This is acute pancreatic fluid collection, which is, there is no necrosis. Whereas in this, we can see there is a part of necrosis adjacent to each other. These are usually the gray zones where it is very difficult to call whether a pseudocyst or a wall of necrosis if there is a minimal necrosis. This is the CT scan wherein we can see a lot of peripancreatic edema and fluid collections adjacent to it with necrosis. As I was talking about MRI, this is the plain MRI where you can see this is the acute pancreatitis with necrosis involving in the head and the body part of the pancreas. And when we do a contrast, there we can see that these are the non-enhancing areas. Similarly, in this adjacent picture, in a plain scan, we can see a mixed heterogeneous region with the amount of necrosis in the pancreas and peripancreatic region. And on contrast, these pancreas we can see well enhanced, whereas these areas of non-enhancement. So these are the areas of necrosis, and depending on these necrosis and adjacent necrosis, the Balthazar has divided the severity of pancreatitis with scoring system for mild, moderate, and severe. So once the peripancreatic fluid collections are there, then usually the first thing which comes to our mind is how should we react? So this is an excellent abstract which I have seen in the American Journal of Gastroenterology from India Asian Institute, where they have presented the data saying that acute pancreatic fluid collections are seen in around 10%, necrosis in 7.7%, and pseudocyst in 6.2%, and walled off pancreatic necrosis in 7.5%. This was the presentation, and almost 32% had associated venous thrombosis. And these patients, when were followed with observation at 3 months, almost 20% had resolution in the initial lesions, and then the reduction was seen in around 27.6%, whereas increase in the baseline disease was seen in 26%. And when they were further followed for 3 to 6 months, we can see the spontaneous resolution was seen in almost 55% of the patient, and reduction in almost 17% of the patient, whereas 13% of the patient had increase in the injury. So they concluded 3/4 of the peripancreatic fluid collection undergoes spontaneous resolution within 6 months, while most relapse and vascular complication occur during first 3 months. So why this natural history is important for us? Because based on this, usually our decision making has to be. So when we follow the patients, we should be aware that there is a very fair chance that they may undergo spontaneous regression. And this also helps us in deciding that not all patients need intervention. If we wait for some time, even the complication occurs, they can improve over the period. Now coming to the management of peripancreatic fluid collection, I would like to give one acronym in the name of pancreas, where 8-step acronym helps us. pancreas, where P stands for perfusion, A for analgesic, and N for nutrition, which has been covered by Dr. Birappa sir as a early management. And then clinical, so that you can follow the patient clinically once they have developed the pancreatitis. R for radiology, E for endoscopy, A for antibiotics, and S for surgery. So these are the 8-step acronym to remember the management of pancreas. And when it comes to the management of pancreatic fluid collection, 3 Ds are important: delay, delay, delay as much as you can. If you find that there is a need of intervention, best is to drain it, either drain endoscopically or a percutaneous drainage. And if that drainage doesn't improve, then you can go ahead with a debridement. So debridement again can be further divided into either percutaneous drain. On that, we can do either a ureteroscopic debridement or a laparoscopic debridement, or an endoscopic debridement, or an open surgical debridement. So what are the indications and timing for intervention of pancreatic fluid and necrotic collection? Previously, presence of symptoms, complications like abdominal pain which was persistent and nagging, gastrointestinal obstruction or ileus, vascular compression, biliary obstruction, and size of collection. These were the indications for intervention in patients with peripancreatic fluid collection. But however, there is a significant shift from those thoughts to now recent indication: infected collection, symptomatic collections after a long period of conservative management. These are the indication of intervention in patients with peripancreatic fluid collection. Our dictum should be wait, wait, and wait. First, we should try for a conservative management. Conservative management means if we see these previously, which were indications like complications. Suppose if patient has a pain, patient has a ileus, patient has a vascular compression, biliary obstruction, then what should we do? We need to allay this problem of patient. So for this, for pain, we should give good analgesic. If patient has a ileus, we can use a nutrition, enteral nutrition, or a nasojejunal nasogastric tube to bypass the duodenum and pancreas, which can decrease pain, which can decrease obstruction. And for vascular compression, if sometimes indicated there is a thrombosis, to prevent the progression of thrombosis, he may need some anticoagulation. Biliary obstruction, temporarily we can do a ERCP and stenting. So during this period of conservative period, we need to keep them on enteral feeding. If they are able to tolerate orally, it is good. Otherwise, we need to supplement them with the by putting a nasojejunal or a nasogastric tube and give feeding. So management mainly depends, modality which we are going to use mainly depends on whether the presence of wall around the collection, distance of collection from the lumen, presence and extent of the solid debris. What are the options which are available for the management? One is observation. A very close observation and follow-up is needed when we are not treating a patient actively. Of a patient with pancreatitis, he needs more close follow-up, regular visits to the clinic, then percutaneous, then endoscopic, and then surgical. These are the 4 things we need to know about. Observation, we should have a very close eye on patient. We should watch whether he has developed any new complaint. Like patient may be having failure to thrive. His oral intake is inadequate, but on further, he is not able to take orally at all. Whether he has developed any fever, whether he has developed any drop in hemoglobin, or he is feeling giddiness, which may indicate hemorrhage. So those symptoms, observation of symptoms are important. Regular frequent visits, we should proactively call them for regular visits. Then blood investigation should be done at regular interval to see for whether there is any rising WBC count, whether there is any drop in hemoglobin. Inflammatory markers, initially they have a role, but once patient gets stabilized in an outpatient, there is no need to repeat them again and again. And then involves counseling. When we are observing, we need to explain them that this is the natural history of pancreatitis. You will have a problem. It will take some time for you to get adjusted. And then over the period, you will get improve as your diet increase and your strength increases, you will feel more better. And if in case you develop any complication, we are here to treat you, and that will give you better outcome. And intervening in the early period may lead to a life risk. So first I will talk about the percutaneous drainage. when is percutaneous drainage needed or is done? Usually in the early pancreatitis without a wall, percutaneous drainage is a better option as compared to that of surgery. In a patient with severe acute pancreatitis who needs an intervention, but he is a very sick patient with either organ failure in the form of chronic kidney disease, a poor cardiac risk patient, COPD patient, or who is not fit for anesthesia. Why I want to highlight this? Because even for endoscopy, patient need anesthesia. Surgery, definitely he needs anesthesia. And when these risk factors are there, a percutaneous drainage can be done at the bedside, and which is very helpful. It can be done as an alternative to endoscopic procedure, or now I can say it is better than an endoscopic procedure nowadays with advancement in the available techniques, which I will cover in the due course. And also it is as a part of step-up approach. So when we feel that yes, patient needs a drainage, at that time as a part of step-up approach, we can start with percutaneous drainage, and depending on improvement, we can further decide. Percutaneous catheter work as a definitive treatment or a bridge to the surgical necrosectomy when we feel that the necrosis is extensive, bilaterally extended into paracolic gutter, where endoscopy is of not help. So this is the one study I'm quoting from PGI Chandigarh. I'm deliberately giving Indian examples because we will know what is the scenario and how it is happening with us. Here they have done a study on 105 patients where there was a peripancreatic fluid collection, and out of which 59 required percutaneous drainage, and of these 38 were infected collection, and they improved with the percutaneous drainage, and 5 required surgery, and mortality was seen in 5, and sterile collection was in 21 cases, and which improved with percutaneous drainage in almost 20%, and death was seen in 1, though it is not specified. And percutaneous catheter drainage work as a definitive treatment or a bridge therapy to surgical necrosectomy. It can be performed at any place with surgeon and radiologist around. A lot of talk about the endoscopic drainage, endosono-guided necrosectomy and procedures, but it is very difficult to reproduce at the multiple places. Whereas if we see percutaneous catheter drainage, it can take place at any level where you should have a good expert surgeon with a radiologist who can give him a good window where they can able to place a percutaneous drain, and that can be a temporizing measure as well. Suppose if we have a catheter placed at that place, patient will have decrease in initially inflammatory response, then they will have a decrease in tachycardia, fever, symptomatically improved. Though he requires a completion necrosectomy, through that catheter port it can be done, and if needed, it can be referred to a higher center where expertise are available. We need not waste time just for the lack of expertise. Whereas in endosono, it is not reproducible like in everyone's hand, and it requires a particular center. Sir, is this video visible, sir?
No, Sachin.
No, okay. Actually, I am about to show severe acute pancreatitis, how we have put a percutaneous drain and improved. Then in one case, we have put the drain, wherein one drain drained lot of pus and necrotic material, but it was not sufficient, and we had to put one more drain. And so we have put 2 drains in the retroperitoneum, and then we used to do regular lavage. So you can see here with this lavage, and though in this patient took almost 30 days to get normalized, but patient with extensive necrosis in the retroperitoneal area, we can put multiple drains, and even nowadays with our increasing experience, within 7 days of primary drain, means initially we put a 14-French catheter, then we immediately upsize in 7 days to around 28 to 32 number abdominal ADK drain, and then through that ADK drain we do continuous irrigation and try to see the easily moving necrosis out, and it helps us in the healing of area also. I feel that though it's just my understanding that with repeated irrigation or some hydrogen peroxide wash, early granulation of the area occurs and cavity gets collapsed. Percutaneous drainage, though it's easily available, can be done. There are issues with it. There can be a bleeding during the procedure, which is reported varying from 0 to 50%. these drains, they get easily blocked. Even we had same problem. Catheters or drains used to get blocked. They used to get slip. So for the blockage, we have moved from 14 French catheter to now we are directly putting a 32 or 30 or 28 French drain. And for slippage of catheter, we do it proper fixing as everyone does it. And moreover, we involve patient. We tell him that we have avoided a major surgery. And now it is your job that you take care of a drain so that he can recover without doing this. And moreover, we are able to manage him on outpatient basis. So it becomes a very important boon for him that such a big issue, once it has acute episodes are taken care, he can be on regular OPD basis follow-up, where he is also involved and he need to take care of this. Early and proactive PCD provides control of extravasated pancreatic secretion and maintaining a patent drain at the site, allow necrotic cavity to collapse over the period and early healing. Endotherapy. Endotherapy, though it's attractive, lot talked about it, but it requires highly expert center. Only few in the country, I can say, are able to do this. It's very difficult to duplicate, and but we need to know about it. Endotherapy can be either directly endoscopic transpapillary drainage or transmural drainage. Transpapillary drainage is through ERCP and pancreatic duct stenting, where sometimes a resolution of fluid collection or a pseudocyst can occur. And transmural is when a pseudocyst or a wall of necrosis has an impression on gastric or a duodenal mucosa. A transmural perforation is done, and through that the stent are placed. Either it can be a plastic stent or a metal stent. These are done either directly through endoscopy, seeing the impression. Nowadays, endosono guided approach, which is the most preferred approach for the endotherapy. And endotherapy, it can be again added with multiple, like you can add endoscopic drainage with external percutaneous drainage with assisted video ureteric catheter debridement. So these are the various options available for the endotherapy. The cases which are not suitable for endotherapy are usually those which are ill-formed peripancreatic fluid collection. Wall thickness, if it is less than 1 centimeter, usually endotherapy is usually not possible. When they are located away from the bowel, like both paracolic gutters, pelvis, or if in the transverse mesocolon, which is not abutting to the bowel wall, or when there is a doubtful diagnosis, as we have seen, Birappa sir has shown one case of obstructive jaundice with a cyst, and they thought it was an incidental pancreatic cyst. So in such cases, we may not be comfortable enough to go ahead with endoscopic drainage. Endoscopic drainage also has its own complication. Bleeding is usually seen in around 18% of the patient from the puncture site, or because of wall of necrosis or a pseudoaneurysm. Majority of the bleeding episodes are usually controlled with coagulation or injection or a clip. Rarely it may require angioembolization, and very rarely it may require surgery. Perforation, as it happens in open surgery or any other minimally invasive procedure, there can be injury to the gut wall, or there can be injury to the wall of pancreatic necrosis. And treatment consists of either conservative management or a surgery, depending on the extent of perforation. Gas embolism is one of the rare complications of endoscopic procedure, but it can be fatal. Due to communication between the source of gas and bloodstream, it happens. Intervention and inflammation are the risk factor. It is mandatory to use CO2 during these procedures so as to avoid this fatal complication. Now coming to surgery as an option for management of peripancreatic fluid collection. Surgery, the principle of surgical management require intensive care, identifying the infection, and if indicated, debridement of any infected necrotic areas. Indications are biliary pancreatitis, where we do cholecystectomy, infected pancreatic necrosis, where we can do minimal invasive necrosectomy or open necrosectomy, massive hemorrhage, usually after a procedure or a hemorrhage, pseudoaneurysm with where the embolization of the aneurysm has been done, and even then there is a hemorrhage with infection, or a hemorrhage which is not controlled, or drainage of a pancreatic abscess, or asymptomatic sterile pancreatic necrosis. These are the indications of surgery. Surgery, I will not like to talk surgery as a single procedure. I will club it with a step-up approach. I feel the surgery for pancreatic fluid collection should be now synonymous with a step-up approach, wherein first step is, if indicated for intervention, it should be a percutaneous catheter drainage or a transluminal endoscopic transmural drainage, followed by minimal invasive necrosectomy only when there is no improvement, either with endoscopic necrosectomy or with a minimal invasive like video assisted necrosectomy. There are very good studies pertaining to this. I am giving only these 2-3 studies which are very important, and they have changed the total management of acute pancreatitis. PANTER trial, wherein it has shown that the major complications with step-up approach are very less, mortality is significantly less, and there is no increased need of additional interventions when step-up approach is applied. Step-up approach is percutaneous or endoscopic drainage followed by minimal invasive, and even if with that it is not improving, then you go for an open necrosectomy. Step-up approach can be done both surgically and endoscopically. This is one more trial, tension trial, which shows no significant difference in mortality and morbidity following using either surgical step-up or an endoscopic step-up. The mean hospital stay was though shorter in endoscopically treated patients, and pancreaticocutaneous fistula were less in a endoscopically treated patient. With this paper, there was some thinking of modification in the surgical approach, and which gave rise to the transgastric debridement of necrosis, and which has become now a common procedure in patients with severe acute pancreatitis with pancreatic necrosis. I will come to that also in subsequent slide.
Sachin,
This is one more trial of
Sachin, do you mind in closing in another 5 minutes, please?
Yes, sir. It will finish in 5 minutes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
I'm not talking on cystic neoplasm, sir.
Okay, yeah, fine. Yeah, fine, no problem. Thank you.
So this is one more Miser trial which compared minimal invasive surgery to the endoscopic step-up approach, where there was no difference in mortality in both the procedure. There was no new onset organ failure were also not significant. Major complications were more with the surgical step-up approach, and enteral and pancreaticocutaneous fistula were more with the surgical approach. So in conclusion, endoscopic step-up approach preferred the treatment for infected necrotizing pancreatitis, although endoscopic step-up might not be feasible in all aspects. So we need to keep this in mind. Endoscopy has a very strict selection criteria with a thick wall, localized to lesser sac, where we can approach intramurally and do the debridement. A recent analysis of this complete studies, which I discussed, was done, wherein they were able to conclude that there is given the heterogeneous procedure in the surgical group as well as the low amount of randomized evidence, further studies are needed to evaluate the efficacy of endoscopy on surgery or surgery on endoscopy. Surgical options, once we have done this step up and we have reached like percutaneous drainage or endoscopy, and then we want to decide what has to be done. Then comes the minimal access retroperitoneal pancreatic necrosectomy, video assisted retroperitoneal debridement. So you usually we take a ureter scope wherein we can use the instrument to loosen the necrosis and keep irrigating and take out the necrosis. And the other approach is transperitoneal, wherein just like other laparoscopic procedure, we enter the abdomen and then either approach transgastric or into the lesser sac, do the debridement, place the drain and come out. And same procedure are done in open procedure also. Now, this is something which I will call surgery revisited in acute pancreatitis with pancreatic necrosis, where a surgical transgastric debridement is done. It is similar to that of endoscopy. It involves anterior gastrotomy to access the posterior wall of stomach. It allows easy, short, single debridement procedure in contrast to the endoscopic approach, which is technically demanding. It's long with multiple episodes required, and a lot of gadgets required in armamentarium like endosono, like other APC, or we can do simultaneous cholecystectomy along with it, like perform a laparoscopic cholecystectomy and then do either laparoscopic transgastric necrosectomy or give a small incision and do it. And the potential advantage of this procedure is it helps in drain, as we do the posterior window, it helps in drainage of pancreatic fluid directly into the stomach. So all the complications which are blamed for minimal invasive surgery over the endoscopy are taken care. This is also best located for centrally located necrosis. extension into the paraglottic cutter can be challenging, but we have tried in our own institute, wherein we are able to do debridement even in the paracolic gutter with the help of assisted scopes. This is the recent publication in Annals of Surgery, which shows surgical transgastric necrosectomy for a wall of necrosis, a single stage procedure, where they have shown post-operative morbidity is and mortality are very less. The mean post-operative hospital stay is around 8 days, whereas we have seen in many endoscopic studies also, it is average more than 15 to 20 days. And 91% have a complete clinical resolution. So this is another significant one procedure, and you have 91% improvement. But it is at the cost of repeated admission and an intervention, which is seen in almost 20% of the patient. This is one, you can see here, this is, we have given a small incision, did the anterior gastrotomy, posterior wall. Sorry, it's not playing. And then you can see the necrosis which was removed through this. And this is the incision at the end of surgery. And what additional modification we are doing is, when we are going into the lesser sac, through this guided, we are putting additional drains here, which helps us in removing, draining this area also. And even this bilateral we can do. And as this, we are approaching through this area, we can do this. So this can be overcome. On the top of that, if we have a ureteroscope or even a telescope, it will help us in guiding and removing the necrosis. We have done till date 14 cases of surgical transgastric debridement. In 8 cases, it was only lesser sac. In 6, it was paracolic extension. Average stay after the procedure was 3 to 5 days. In 1 case, we required the percutaneous intervention. This was particularly a case where there was extension of the paracolic gutter. And initially, we were apprehensive to go onto the paracolic gutter to drain it. But now we have added additional procedure to it. We are trying to place the drains in the paracolic gutter. In 1 or 2 cases, we have put even before the surgery, so that it helps us in guiding during the surgery. I'll directly come to the disconnected duct syndrome. So when the patient with severe pancreatitis, they have disruption of duct, either they are treated endoscopically or through percutaneous drain or surgery. This disconnection can lead to a persistent pancreatic fistula. In endoscopy, as it is drainage is inside the stomach, it usually won't matter. They may get recurrent collections, they may get recurrent cyst, and they may require intervention. But whereas in percutaneous and open surgery, if it is not through transmural, in those cases, it can be a difficult situation wherein it is either treated with pancreatic duct stenting. There are again further types of this disconnected pancreatic duct, or sometime it may require surgical resection of distal pancreas. So I think this animation will not work. My take home message for this is, remember the acronym pancreas: perfusion, analgesia, nutrition, clinical radiological endoscopy, antibiotic and surgery. Approach is step-up approach. Surgery, transgastric is one of the best procedure now which is coming up. Well, the results are yet to come finally. And overall, try to delay, drain and debride. Thank you.
Thank you, Sachin. That's a very good and extensive presentation of all the necrotic and procedures that are available as of now. Now, as we are running late, I request Sastry sir to start his presentation. Professor Sastry doesn't require any introduction. He's the senior most surgical gastroenterologist in Hyderabad, and sir has an extensive knowledge on pancreatic diseases and experience as well on pancreatic diseases. I am very thankful for him to agree and be with us today. Thank you very much, sir.
Can you see me?